Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Cisco Connect 2014.
Technologic.
How about a round of applause once again for El Gama Penumbra? That was quite impressive. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Thank you very much for joining us today. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to Cisco Connect 2014. Give yourselves a round of applause for making it here in this very, very special event. My name is Pat Natividad and I will be your host for today. Before we begin our sessions, we just have a few reminders and we would like to advise you of our very, very special raffle draw. It will be, and we are going to be using the social media. I could actually see some of the 10 cards on your tables where the mechanics are, and it'll also be flashed on the screen right now so that you can see how our social media raffle draw will happen, all right? So the Philippines, as we all know, is one of the top social media users in the world. That is why we would like to incorporate that for today's event. All right, so here you can see the social media raffle mechanics. This is the best time to put out your smartphones or your mobile phones, because we want you all to take part of this raffle draw. Send in your entries. The more entries, the more chances of winning. Because, ladies and gentlemen, our generous sponsors are giving away lots of amazing prizes for today. But we have one very generous sponsor, that is, of course, Cisco, who will be giving us a very grand prize. Do you know what that is? What? I have only one audience here. Do you want to know what is up for grabs? The lucky winner for today's event who will win the raffle draw will bring home a brand new MacBook Air. Wow. Can I just see a show of hands, please? And let's give a round of applause for Cisco for being generous and for giving away that very, very awesome prize. That is why, everybody, we want you all to take part of this and make sure that if you like a relevant topic of any of our speakers for today, or take a selfie, take a group shot, and make sure that you use any of our social medias, whether it be Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. And just don't forget to use the hashtag Cisco Connect. Once again, don't forget to use the hashtag Cisco Connect. And once you are done, we will be requesting you to put away your mobile phones, because we would like you all to concentrate on our sessions. All right, I hope that's a promise. All right, everybody, Cisco Connect Asia 2014 is actually on its 3rd year. Did you know that? It was formerly known as Cisco Innovate, and Manila is the 5th leg, as this event runs sequentially in 6 other Asian countries. And this year's theme, as you can see later on in our widescreen, is that fast innovation requires fast IT. Later on, we will present to you just how fast the industry is going, and it is the goal of Cisco Connect to help you make the most of tomorrow's opportunities by giving you the education and insights you need to be part of this new world called the Internet of Everything. And as you've seen in our opening video, IT has come a long way and continues to go very fast. And of course, the economic opportunities are limitless. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, I will be requesting you all to focus your attention to the widescreen as we take a look at this video. And to officially start our event, let's invite Cisco Philippines Country Manager to welcome us all here today. He is responsible for the sales and marketing activities in the country and has more than 25 years of experience in the IT industry, which means he's very seasoned. Not older, but seasoned. Ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome the handsome Mr. Louis Castañeda.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking the time off your busy schedules to join us today at our Cisco Connect 2014 event. And thank you, Pat, for that season thing. You know, I started working when I was in high school, so 25 years. But to start off the event, it's all started in 1984 when two scientists from Stanford, a husband and wife team, actually decided they wanted to communicate to each other, and that actually led for the development of the first multi-protocol router. That was 1984, and it also started, Cisco. It's actually coined after one of the iconic cities in the United States, San Francisco, and 30 years after that husband and wife team developed the first multi-protocol router, we're still in the process of connecting the unconnected. And we continue to look at, market transitions. We still are looking at corners to see what we can offer into the market on how we could innovate and offer the best solutions available to you, our customers, and also our partners. And the end result of all of this innovation is actually providing you what we call business outcomes. At the heart of Cisco is actually intelligent connections, and these are really very important things that Cisco has strived to provide our customers and our market. And it all started with connectivity. Can you imagine before, it seems like a miracle in the 1980s, but now it's as common as waking up in the morning when the first thing you do when you actually go to an office or to your office desk is actually check your email, right? And also look at or visit websites, your favorite websites. In my case, I actually visit Sports Illustrated because I really wanted to get abreast on a lot of the sports stuff happening. And then the next phase of that development is what we call the network economy, when we started connecting supply chains. And it actually changed the way we shop. I myself, I'm a frequent Amazon user, so I buy most of my stuff through Amazon. And that has changed the way the companies also market their products, because they now have the web to actually extend their market beyond their local geographies. The third one, or the phase we're actually currently in, is what we call the immersive experience. And these are the time when we started digitizing a lot of our interactions. It's very common for us now to be in social media. I think everyone has a Facebook account. I'm not sure if does everyone have a Facebook account? I know some deleted their Facebook account for some, because of some reason or another. But most of us were either on Twitter or in Facebook. And if you're in a professional, probably you're a member of LinkedIn. And then we're also in the state or phase of what we call the Internet of Everything phase. And later on, our colleagues from IDC would actually be sharing with you some of the things happening in that particular space. Cisco within the Internet of Everything. As I mentioned, and also the video earlier on shows, there's about 19 trillion value at stake in the next 10 years in Internet of Everything. Before, we were just talking about what we call the Internet of Things. But Cisco saw that it's just not things. you have to have people, process, data, and things. And that actually describes or incorporates all the opportunities for connection in what we call the Internet of Everything. And we have to also take note of the market and industry trends that's impacting the Internet of Everything. And these things are cloud, mobility, and I'm pretty sure you have heard about SDN or software-defined networking. And all of these are actually leading to what we call the fast IT, or the fast IT that's now driving businesses all around the Philippines and also all around the world. Customers rely on Cisco for all this innovation happening. And as you can see on the screen, since the time we introduced the first multi-protocol router in 1986, and we have several milestones that we wanted to highlight, such as in 1987, that's actually the time where our revenue already was starting to pick up. I think we were doing roughly about 170 million at the time. And also around 1993, we were able to hit a milestone of being able to ship 100,000 routers. That was 1993. And then some significant product that we were able to launch into the market includes in 2004, we were actually able to introduce to the market what we call the CRS, or the Cisco Routing System 1, which is our solution for the telco industry or the service provider industry. And at that time, it was the fastest router in the world. And in 2006, we introduced telepresence as a solution into the market, which changed the way people now conduct meetings. They actually didn't need to fly to different locations to experience the same face-to-face experience that most people wanted in doing meetings. And then in 2013, we actually introduced a new technology. We call it the Cisco Network Convergence System. It says that it's the planet's fastest router. And again, this is the new innovation for Cisco that we provide our service provider customers that allows them to provide the technology needed in the growing need for mobility and cloud. And also to harness the capabilities that's needed for Internet of Everything. And then this is actually very important. Cisco has been a business that's roughly about $47 billion in the last fiscal year. And we're actually spending roughly about 12% of our revenue on R&D. That's roughly about $6 billion. And that's one of the highest among the top IT companies in the world. And you could see some of our peers as well in the board. And that 12% represents the innovation that Cisco is bringing into the market consistently throughout all these years. We have roughly about 71,000 employees. Thank you, finally. 70,000 channel partners. That translates to about a program that's rated among the top in the industry in terms of channel programs. We have about 17,000 patents and roughly about 28,000 engineers. That's about 40% of our entire workforce. So we're really an innovation organization, and we have the financial capability to support and drive this innovation into the market. Acquisitions is actually at the heart of Cisco. And since 1993, we have made roughly about 170 of these acquisitions. And I'm pretty sure you're aware or knows a lot of these products that's we have introduced into the market. And the newer ones that you've seen will be, in terms of mobility, we have Meraki. In terms of security, although we have introduced IronPort quite a while, the recent acquisition that we made is actually SourceFire, and that's one of the top security solutions or IPS and UTM solutions in the world today. Also for collaboration, you have heard of Jabber and Tandberg, and of course WebEx. Most of the companies now actually use WebEx. And obviously, Cloudpia and Tidal for our cloud orchestration solutions for data center. and Scientific Atlanta, which is a standard among the video and companies in the Philippines. Market leadership matters. You know, Cisco is one of those companies who could actually say that we're number one or number two in most of the segments that we participate in. So we have really a wide range of products, from routing to telepresence to mobility to security and even to unified computing. And as you could see, we are actually number one not only worldwide, but in a lot of cases also in the Philippines. Actually, a notable statistics here is actually in the Philippines, we're the number one blade server vendor with a market share of about 30%. And we're also number one in terms of wireless LAN and security in the Philippines. So, you know, being number one means that Cisco has continued to innovate and provide the best solution available in the market to answer the fast-changing needs of the market and our customers. And our greatest supporters, obviously, is you, our customers. You know, we really value customer satisfaction. And that's the reason why every year we survey roughly about 100,000 customers worldwide. And we ask the relevant questions from product quality to product support, and even how our teams are covering each of the accounts. And we value and we listen to, you know, the feedback that we gather and use this to improve the way we support you, our customers. And also we use it as a way to improve the products that we offer into the market. As you could see, we have steadily worked on improving this customer satisfaction, which is measured by the levels that you're seeing on screen. So what can you expect for the rest of the day? We've managed to secure some of our regional and global subject matter experts to share with you the best practices and their knowledge in specific areas that we have broken into several tracks. One is mobility, the other one is cloud and virtualization, the other one is big data and analytics. And also we have, outside, you could see some of our partners and the solutions that they're offering into the market, and they would be more than glad to share with you how they work with Cisco in creating values in terms of the solution that they can offer your respective organizations. Last but not the least, I want to thank the sponsors who helped make this event a reality. First one is Intel, our strategic partner. Now, Intel has been our partner since when we were doing Cisco Innovate, and they've continued to be our strategic partner in our Cisco Connect series. Diamond sponsors Dimension Data and EMC. They will also be participating in the tracks later on. Dimension Data for mobility and EMC for data center and virtualization. Gold sponsors F5, Fujitsu, Microdata, NetApp, Panduit, TE Connectivity, and VMware. And of course, our broadband sponsor is Globe, who is providing the broadband connectivity for today. So again, thank you for taking the time off to join us today, and I hope that this will be a fruitful day for all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cisco Philippines Country Manager, Mr. Louis Castañeda. To give us a preview of our next topic, let's watch these videos.
It's imperative that IT is able to respond much more quickly than we have been able to traditionally, because the pace of change in business is rapidly increasing.
The Internet of Everything is coming fast, and it's actually already here. If you think about the mobile phones and social media and online commerce as being part of that role, then it's already here.
So we see organizations really going through a state of transformation right now. And what organizations need to do is really transform that legacy environment into one that's much more modern, one that's much more agile and efficient.
The Internet of Everything is not going to get smaller, and it's largely not going to get simpler or less profound. It is very big. But understanding your enterprise landscape, how everything is connected and what things are dependent on other things, is extraordinarily important.
That's where a lot of that programmability is going to come in, where that automation and orchestration is really going to play a key role, that as these environments scale to encompass that Internet of Everything, and not only your own internal environment, but service provider and Wi-Fi, etc., there's really going to need a lot of tight coordination and integration in order to be able to facilitate and make the changes that are going to be necessary in order to ensure a smooth transition and be able to make that concept of the Internet of Everything, the Internet of Things, an effective one for your business and have it deliver positive business results.
By connecting devices together, can you improve the business outcome of a customer, and how? By connecting people and devices together. By connecting services and devices and people together. What are the applications of all of those connections and all of that data? And can you make all the players in that ecosystem successful?
So in this world of the Internet of Everything, there's three key concepts that any organization, and especially CIOs, need to think about. One is hyper-awareness, two is the ability to predict or predictive capability, and three is agility, and that's more on the execution side.
Because the same principles that have applied in old IT apply in new IT. They're just turbo powered.
You can almost look at Agile IT as the foundation of IOE, and something that really can't be accomplished from an IOE perspective without having that Agile foundation underneath it.
Increasingly, every company is becoming a technology company. This is very clear. If you're a large organization and you don't have great technology in place, it's going to be hard to manage yourself and to keep up with your competitors.
And what organizations need to do is really transform that legacy environment into one that's much more modern, one that's much more agile and efficient.
The Internet of Everything is going to create so much data, and it's going to create so many opportunities. But if it creates unlimited complexity along the way, we won't achieve very much.
It's imperative that IT is able to respond much more quickly than we have been able to traditionally, because the pace of change in business is rapidly increasing.
Fast IT really refers to the fact that IT infrastructure in the future has to be much more programmable, automated, orchestrated, and have the ability to really tie both physical and virtual infrastructure together.
If you think about being a fast IT organization, or the concept of fast IT, when I think about that, the reality is it boils down to how can you make your organization faster and yet at the same time more simple. So it's all about speed and simplicity.
The same principles that have applied in old IT apply in new IT. They're just turbo powered.
And the ability to respond quickly brings you into a different innovation paradigm.
When you think of the concept of agility, you want to have a fluid, dynamic type of infrastructure where our resources become just as dynamic and just as fluid, and we're able to move them around as business policy dictates.
Long term, the companies that are going to be most successful are the ones where business management, business leadership is effective at exploiting technology to drive innovation and produce competitive advantage.
So organizations need to figure out how they can spend more of their IT budget on those innovative technologies, those enabling technologies that are going to allow them to respond better to the business.
Technology doesn't stand still, nor should IT departments.
Ultimately, the Internet of Everything, the opportunity that it presents, great organizations will leverage that hyper-awareness, that predictive capability, and that agility or ability to respond quickly. They'll leverage those key tenets as a way for them not just to compete, but a way to win.
So what have you picked up from that video? This is the question for all of you. What is the keyword that you have picked up from that video? Anyone? Sorry? The Internet of Everything. Something else, like a keyword. One keyword, because this is going to be our topic. Yes. I love it, Cisco. Of course, we patronize that. The keyword is actually fast, right? It cannot be just IT. It must be fast. fast IT. It should be turbo powered, all right? And our speaker is from IDC, or the International Data Corporation, an American market research, analysis, and advisory firm specializing in information technology, telecommunications, and consumer technology. He's here to give us an insight on the national information and communications technology trends in the next 5 to 10 years. Let's all welcome the AVP and Head of Mobility and Internet of Things, IDC Asia Pacific, Mr. Charles Anderson.
Good morning. Everyone awake in the back over there? Okay. So we're going to talk about technology now, and we're going to talk about what you need to do to really leverage it. And what we're going to talk about is how you drive value from this technology. So we've talked about the Internet of Everything. What do you need to do to actually get to that point? So we're going to look at its driving value from ICT's third platform. So does everyone know what the third platform is? Does anyone know what the first platform or second one? Guessing not, so we'll start with that as a place to go. What we're going to have with this third platform, it's going to create an era of very hyper-disruptive environments. And when we go back to that first one, and we got to go back 30 years or so, that was the old mainframe environment. And then it moved on to that second platform. And this was more about the LAN, internet environment, client server. And now we have this new third platform. And it's a combination of a number of different facets. Number one, you have the cloud technologies that we're leveraging from everything from infrastructure, platforms, and software. Next, you have big data analytics. You saw how much data we're capturing now. But the thing is, are we actually analyzing it yet? Are we leveraging it? Next one is around mobility, and that's the one technology that everybody here has at least one of. I mean, how many people carry at least 2 phones right now? So quite a few already. I won't even ask above that because I'm sure there's plenty more. But it's also leveraging social business. The way we communicate personally is changing. And that's changing the way we communicate as well, and the way we interact and transact with the vendors that we use, with the products that we like. And it's creating this whole new environment to leverage these different platforms to target emerging markets and develop the innovative industry solutions that are going to change the way we do business. The old way of doing things has changed a lot. Third platform technologies. Before we talked about systems, now we're talking about services. Before it was about information, and now it's about driving innovation. And before we talked about IT, and now we're talking about business agility. The third platform, they cause significant market disruption. So why don't we look at some of those? Who are these companies that are really being disruptive right now, that are leveraging these different technologies? Well, everyone's heard a lot about Alibaba recently due to their IPO. And if you didn't, it was a very small market value I think they come out with. So, and it was massive, and it was changing the way of doing things because it's moved into all these different lines of business in different industries because it can leverage technology. If you look at the hospitality industry, if you see how companies like and Airbnb have actually changed running fundamentally. Do you want me to use the other mic? Is it easier? Okay. In Southeast Asia, some of the more transformative ones we see are coming from Zada and Zalora. And they started out doing e-commerce, but now you see how they're moving into mobile. Now, these companies know them. They're doing e-commerce, but they're changing the way we do it because we're doing it on a mobile device now. And they're driving over half their transactions, not from a PC anymore, but from a mobile device. So they're leveraging that platform. You got companies like SwipeSense, which we'll discuss in a bit, that's changing healthcare, and Khan Academy, changing the way we leverage and deliver education materials. And this is important because a lot of companies that are like that are pushing into Southeast Asia because there's a great opportunity to leverage this platform so we can control the quality of education when it goes out to the rural regions. So this is just a small example of some of these companies and how they're actually changing the way that industries operate, and they're quick and they're agile. But when we go out to see, are we really ready for this in Asia, we decided to ask a bunch of C-levels to find out what they thought. So every year we do a survey called the C-Suite Barometer. And we survey over 1,000 C-levels to find out what their views are. And one thing we found is that we asked them, are you leveraging these third platform technologies for your business? When we asked them, and they're from a global company, so a multinational company, 70% said yes, we're already leveraging the third platform technologies to drive our business. But then we wanted to know what happened when we talked to Asian-based companies. And there we found out that 80% of them are not equipped to do it right now. They're just starting out. So what's happening is the MNCs are being quite aggressive in leveraging these technologies, but the local companies across Asia aren't moving as quickly. So what is the status of these different things? We talk about the different components of that third platform, but are we really ready for it? So what we've gone out and done is we've surveyed a lot of different people on different areas to find out how mature the industry is in Asia Pacific. And when we do this, we break it into what we call a maturity scape benchmark. So to make it simple, we'll look at stage one. Stage one is you probably use it, but you don't really know what you're using it for. So ability, you might have it, but you don't really manage it that much and you're not leveraging it. Stage two is when you realize it's not going to go away. So this is where this technology you have, you might as well start planning for. Stage three is what we call repeatable. And repeatable is when it becomes more business as usual. That means you're going to get headcount, you're going to get funding, you'll have a budget that recurs, and you'll start developing a proper strategy around it. Stages 4 and 5 are much more about where you're leveraging that technology to drive competitive differentiation, business transformation, and trying to change the way your industry operates. So we'll start by looking at big data. And what you'll see in this, 99% are in the very immature phases of 2, 1, and 0. And 0 means we're doing nothing with it right now. So while there's huge opportunity, there's a lot of room for growth still, we're still stuck in this early phase. We capture all this data. You saw in one of the images earlier, I think it's in 2012, we captured more data than the previous 5,000 years. But what are we doing with that data right now? So this is still in the very early days of adoption. Social business is becoming more mature. Companies are realizing how they can leverage social media to change the way they interact and transact with their customers. They can monitor how their customers are behaving online and identify problems they have with that company up front. So you can see that's more of a little bit of a shift to the right. Mobility, this is the one that still we're figuring out what to do with, but it's moved up quite a bit in the last year. And you can see 8% of the companies still don't have a mobility strategy. And this shocks me because it's the one thing that every employee is going to have as a mobile device, or every customer is going to have. So why would you not have your mobile strategy? But what you see is that stage 2 and 3, it's becoming much more mature. To give you an idea, in the previous year, mobility, 78% were in stages 0 and 1. So this is the fastest growing one right now that companies are really starting to leverage. And a lot of that's because there's a lot more competition in the space. You're seeing the service providers come in there and really try to be aggressive and actually push this as solutions. And finally, cloud. This is the most mature. And you can see it's spread pretty evenly. And it's the only one where you get a real significant portion, about a quarter of the people in that business transformation mode, stages 4 and 5. So these technologies are there. Don't feel like you've missed the boat. There's a lot of room for growth. We're growing together. So there is a lot of opportunity to go forward with this. Now back to that C-suite barometer. We always want to know what people are doing and what their priorities are. And what's changing now is before IT was left on its own. Now IT is being discussed at all levels. So when we ask CEOs, what are your top priorities and concerns? Well, the first one shouldn't be a surprise because this is always what comes up on top. They got to find a way to control the costs within their organization. But what's really interesting is what they're looking at, number 2, 3, and 4. They're looking for new business models. They understand that the consumption models of their customers are changing, and they're worried about new competitors. Now this is interesting because all 3 of these are driven by the third platform. The new business models and new competitors. That could be from your traditional competitors moving and leveraging the third platform. Or it could be from a third platform disruptive company that's coming in and looking at your market because you're underserving your customers. So they're seeing it as an opportunity. The final one is about managing talent. And this is always a challenge as well. But when you start leveraging those other technologies and you make a better environment for your workers, you tend to keep them as well. What's good about this is people are starting to focus on driving cost savings. They're worried about those costs in the organization. But what they're using that money that they're saving is to invest and innovate in emerging technologies and to go after that particular platform. So it's not always just about cutting costs for cutting costs' sake. You need to reinvest and start focusing on where this can go going forward. And to give you an idea about how people are looking at this third platform, I won't read off the whole quote because it's too long, but I'll give you the quick synopsis. DBS is ranked as the most innovative bank in the world. They leverage the third platform across everything they do right now, especially in big data. And what they're doing is they're capturing all the information they can, and they're looking at outside information as well. And traditionally what a bank would do is they'd say, this is our offer, you're the customer. So you have a market of millions of customers. And now what they want is millions of markets. They're trying to make every offering tailored to the individual because they're leveraging big data to know more and more about you. They're monitoring social media so they know how you interact, how you like things to be done. And it's going from this market of millions down to millions of markets. And that's an interesting thing because traditionally we think it's, oh, we have an offer, we push it on the consumer. That doesn't work anymore. We have to tailor things for the consumers. So next what we're going to look at is the CIOs and what they're doing. And we asked them to list out what are the most appealing technologies for you right now. And these are the top 8 responses I'll show you. But the top 4 are very interesting. CIOs are looking at building a foundation right now. They're looking at integrated and converged infrastructure, software-defined networking, open source cloud, and software-defined data center. They realize that they're going to take advantage of the future opportunities. They need to build this foundation. But then what came in numbers 5 through 8? Number 5, industrial IoT solutions. Digital signage, machine-to-machine, and wearable IoT solutions. Now we didn't just give them a list of 8 to choose from and this is how it ranked. This is what they came up with, where they're finding as the most appealing ones to leverage going forward. But what's great about this is they understand we can't just jump and just go do these things. We need to build a solid infrastructure that's going to be flexible and scalable to support these solutions and drive tomorrow's solutions. So another thing that we need to consider well, which is going to be coming into place, is the ASEAN Economic Community. And I like throwing this in because it sort of comes in from the side as a different thing we have to consider. In 2015, AEC will begin to support the free flow of goods, services, skilled labor, and investment. Granted, it's not all going to happen overnight. But think about what this means for companies that leverage the third platform. They're going to go out there and look for markets to go after. They're going to find consumer bases that are being underserved, and they're going to go after it. So what you're going to see in the Philippines is a lot of banking and retail customers coming over here and trying to leverage that third platform and target this audience. But what you should be asking yourself is, in your companies, how can you leverage the third platform to go after the other markets? Where are there opportunities that you can actually and target other countries as well? So it's going to be an exciting time. Like I said, it's not going to happen tonight, but it is an interesting dynamic that we're probably not as prepared as we should be for. Now we'll look at a few of the different opportunities in a little bit more detail. And we'll start off with mobility and this new mobile marketplace that we have. And people are leveraging devices and doing more on them every day. And one thing we like looking at is companies who create what we call a mobile-first strategy. And by mobile-first, we mean that you don't think about your PC. What you think about is how do I design something for a mobile device and use that as the primary way to communicate with my customers. So would it really work in Asia? Well, you think about it. What we have in Asia is the next billion middle class. That's people who live in predominantly rural regions, who haven't been connected to phones, much less the internet, that are now starting to move up, and they're moving from feature phones to smartphones. They're getting more and more disposable income, which means there's a huge new market opportunity to target these customers with products and services. Next thing to think about, more customers use mobile devices to access the internet than PCs. And this isn't a 51 to 49% type ratio. In countries like the Philippines, it's going to be 4 and 5 times as many people will be using a mobile device to access a PC. On the right, what you see is they're called the population pyramid. And I love using these to look at mobility because what it shows you is how young a population is. And you know what young people are like? They like technology. They like mobile devices. And what you see here is that 53% of the population here is under 25 years of age. So what would you like to do? How do you think they want to actually interact and transact with you? Do you think they want to have a PC site built first or interact with them on a PC solution? Or do you think they want mobility? So it's an interesting perspective to look at this. If you take this same population pyramid and you look at somewhere like Singapore, the bottom is much smaller. It goes into a bubble shape. And that's how you can tell the more developed versus the developing markets. But what it creates is a huge opportunity to focus on mobility and use that as a primary means of communicating with your customers. So who does things like this? eBay, for one. They launched a fashion application recently in Brazil called Moda, and they launched it only on mobile devices. They said they were going to try it for 12 months and see if they needed an e-commerce site to support it. They didn't. NPR, which is National Public Radio in the US. They also have a very large website, do a lot of content, and they're doing articles like a traditional print media. And they've changed all that content structure now, because they know we don't consume the same way. I don't have time to read a 20-page article or 2-page article. I like snippets. So all their content now, they design specifically for a mobile device. And the quote they say is, if it doesn't work on mobile, it doesn't work. Probably the most interesting thing I've seen in the last year in this space are the number of mobile-first banks that are going out and getting funding from venture capitalists. And what's interesting is these three are from the US and Europe. I would expect to see a lot more of this going forward in Asia because of how young the population is and how mobile is a primary device. So you can see these things. It's a way you can leverage it, and even if you don't want to leverage it, what you have to be prepared of is, could somebody, a traditional competitor or just some third party, come in and create a mobile-first strategy and go after your customers? Could they provide them a better service? So you need to be aware of this, not only for yourself, but to protect against companies who might come into your market. So now what we'll do is sort of show how this can evolve and how companies can leverage these technologies. And the best example, my favorite one, is still about Alibaba, because their business model expansion has been fantastic. In 1999, they built a B2B site. That was pretty basic. It worked, but then that was focusing more on the large companies. So they built a B2B for small companies. And they thought, well, if we're already doing so well on B2B, why don't we move into B2C, make a business-to-consumer platform? And then they thought, if everybody's already buying things on our sites, why don't we build an online and mobile payments company called Alipay? Then we control the payment systems as well. But then they think, well, if we're already doing this, and we've already built up the B2B site, the B2C platform, and the payments, why don't we do a mall? So what they've basically done right here is they've created eBay, Amazon, and PayPal inside of their organization. If you think about that, and it's also not the smallest market they're going after. You have 600 million consumers using the internet in China right now, and that's out of 1.3 billion. So it's not even 50% yet. There's huge room for growth, and they control 80% of the market. So think about the type of volumes they actually drive. But they didn't stop there. Then they said, well, why don't we start taking this out and going global? So they did AliExpress. And then they thought, we've already got all these platforms, and they've got many more than just this. Why don't we go into taxi bookings? And this is the one I loved. It made no sense. It was like, why would you move into taxi bookings from all of this? Well, they had a platform. They're doing all the payments already. And was it successful? Yeah. They're doing 6 million taxi rides a day right now on their booking system. But then why don't we open a money market fund? Now there's going to be some people in financial services here. This should scare you. They started a money market fund just over a year ago. And you'd think, well, no one's going to trust Alibaba to do this. It's the 4th largest money market fund in the world right now in just over a year. You might have heard they also went into virtual credit cards. And that became so successful that the central bank in China made them illegal because they had to protect the traditional banks. So they just keep expanding and expanding. But now they think, okay, well, we've got all these things. What do we do next? Let's buy into a department store. So now they've gone online and moved into offline. And this gives them a whole new channel to market and branches out even further. But if you think about it, what they've done is they've leveraged technology in all these different areas. They've looked for markets where customers were being underserved, and they've provided a better products and service. Should you be worried here? You might think, well, no, they're not going to come to the Philippines. But they've actually acquired a significant stake in SingPost with the idea of building out a significant logistics network across Southeast Asia. I'd be pretty sure they plan on selling a lot of their products on that as well. So be aware of these. Now we'll go into big data. And I told you big data is still in its early days, but we need to go back and take a look at what we really mean by big data. There's a couple things about it. One, a lot of it's operational support. And these are things we've been doing for 20 and 30 years. If you're in banking or you're in a telco, big data is what we've always done. It was just looking at numbers to understand whether we should give out a mortgage to somebody. But it helps us drive operational efficiencies and support the decision making. Where it's more to now is about that customer profiling. So you can understand the 360-degree view of the customer and can do that micro-segmentation. To give you an idea of some of the things you would do with the first phase, it's more about managing your network. You can do things like preventative and predictive maintenance now. It's incorporating it into your contact centers. It's one thing that is great, to have somebody who can answer the phone and can look on a screen to know what's going on. It's better if you can help them understand what that next best action is. You'll understand why that person calls on the third Monday of every single month. Maybe the payment's due that day. So that you can actually talk to them about it before they even ask you. It changes the way you interact with the customer. You can use it for retention and churn, trying to predict it, those strategies to win them back, and then specialized sales and marketing. But like I said, where a lot of companies are focusing now is much more around what can we actually do in understanding the customer better. And we're using financial services as an example here. So number one, we talked about social media. They're doing peer influencer mapping. You start looking at how people talk to other people. Who are the key influencers? How can I then take that information and put it into my CRM system? Because this person's important. If they complain, tens of thousands of people are going to know about it. It's going to damage my brand. They're doing micro-segmentation. And this is where we talked before about going from a market of millions to millions of markets. They start monitoring social media to see when somebody says something bad. Behavioral tracking. And this is some of the really exciting things. Usage-based insurance I'll talk about in the next slide. But the things you can do by just tracking people now and incorporating that to develop new types of offers is incredible. And to give you an example of how big data is being leveraged within financial services, we're going to use the example of Progressive Insurance. And this is from the US. And if anybody's been in the US in the last year or two, and if you've watched television, you've seen these commercials from Progressive Insurance. And I have to admit, there's probably nobody I hate in the world as much as this woman. They're the cheesiest commercials you've ever seen. But the products they're doing are absolutely brilliant. And one they're doing around micro-segmentation is they're doing a name your own price tool. Now think about this. We're so used to a vendor saying, you can have this for this price. If I want insurance, it costs me $500, $200. What they're saying is, tell us how much you want to pay, and we'll give you a package based on that. If I can only afford $99, they will give me a product, an offering for $99. Think about that if you could go to your telco here saying, I want to spend X dollars per month. And then they had to make a package for you. They're flexible enough to do that right now. So this changes the way that whole industry is operating. The other thing they do, which I find fascinating, is usage-based insurance. And this is really simple. They stick a module inside of a car, and they track the way you drive. For the first 30 days, they see whether you speed, whether you're driving off-road and on sidewalks and trying to hit people. And at the end of that month, they say, you're a good driver. We're going to give you preferential rates because we can show you're a good driver. Now, this is interesting because it's actually based on performance. But if you think about the benefit of this, let's just say, for instance, I'm a really, really bad driver. I speed everywhere. I break the law all the time. I'm not going to sign up for this. So already at the beginning, what they've done is knocked out that percentage of people who are the bad drivers. And now they can focus on the good ones. But you probably think, well, this is just a new technology. It's a fad. They have over 1 million people in the US already using this in the first year since its launch. 1 million people. Now, admittedly, it would be really fun to try and use this concept here, but I think the traffic would make it a little bit difficult. Everyone would go too slow and, it's a bit crazy. So, now we'll take a sidestep again and look at cloud and see what's going on about delivering cloud services. And when I showed you before those percentages, what we actually show on these maps is how people are progressing. And on cloud, I said it is the most mature. And what you can see is Philippines comes out right in the middle of stage 3. So it's in the repeatable stage. That means people are leveraging cloud services here, whether it's infrastructure as a service, platforms, or software. Apologies for that. I don't mean to do it. It just happens. But that's encouraging because it doesn't mean you put everything. Okay. Can you turn this one off? Okay. It doesn't mean you put everything into the cloud. I mean, a lot of your workloads will still sit on premise, but you start leveraging it strategically. And people always say, well, I'm in an industry and I have to be secure. I can't risk going to the cloud. Well, every industry, I don't care whether you're financial services, whether you're government, there's portions of your business you could be putting into the cloud. And that's what you need to look at. And here's a good example of it. I didn't want to come here and give you a very complex G-Cloud example from Singapore and how they're putting everything online. I want to give you a nice simple one so you can understand how easy it is to drive tangible benefits from it. And this is from Hamilton City Council in New Zealand. And they have a simple challenge like every other council. They have citizens that want to interact online and through mobile devices. But of course, it's a government, so it has CapEx limitations. They don't have unlimited funding, so they can't go out and invest every time they want to develop a new application. So what they invested in was a cloud-based platform as a service. It gave them this platform, the shared service, to build all these new applications. And it made it nice and cheap. So they were able to try a lot more applications, but if they failed and weren't used, it didn't cost them that much money. And so the benefits on that, it's easy to start deploying, and then it's easy to actually give these solutions to your customers. And it ended up doing it a nice, secure, scalable, pay-as-you-go model. So CapEx-wise, they're covered because it's all OpEx. And when they did this, the nice thing was that Hamilton was able to do it, and they used that same platform for some of the other city councils. So you think about it before, every city council will build out all their own infrastructure and their own platforms. Now what they're doing is sharing these across the different groups. But what I want to show you quickly is how you can really leverage cloud to change your business. And I'll give you two examples. The first one's Pinterest. And I'm sure most people will know this. Allows you to track things, pin them. Within 18 months of its launch in 2010, they had 18 million users. So 18 million users in only 18 months. Not bad. They managed 410 terabytes of data and had 12 employees. So thinking about that, every employee basically had 1.5 million customers. Why could they do this? Because they used the cloud for everything. People started putting more information, tagging more information. They used cloud to just build it out. And they did this flexibly. It gave them the chance to really grow quickly. And they didn't have to worry about the costs. Now think about this. If they weren't using the cloud, how much would it cost them just to store that data? And then how many people would they need to do this? Another one which I think most people in the room have used or at least know quite well of is Instagram. And Instagram was acquired by Facebook for a small amount of only $1 billion. And at that time, Instagram had 30 million users and only 2 back-end engineers. Now, first of all, is there anybody in this room from your company? Does your company have 30 million users? Anybody? Anybody have over 5 million? Someone's got to have over 5 million customers. Anyone? But think about that. How about this? Does anybody have only 2 engineers in your company? Okay. Now you think about how flexible you can be when you start leveraging these models. And it doesn't mean I think you should start an Instagram. But think if somebody wants to go after your industry and how flexible they can be and the cost they can pull out of their business to compete against you. And a question for you before we go on. If you started a company today, now you yourself, would you build your infrastructure and applications on-prem, or would you do it in the cloud? Now think about that last slide. We always look at things because we have this legacy mindset. We've got all of our equipment we've already paid for. If you were doing it today on your own, what would you do? You'd probably go for the cloud version. So think about that. What can you do internally to start pushing things to the cloud? I'm not saying put everything out there, but a lot of your workloads can be moved out there. So now, the crux of it. We've talked a lot about the Internet of Everything earlier, so now I'm going to give you IDC's perspective on it. But before I do, I want to ask a question to everyone in the audience. First of all, everyone just raise your hand 1 second. I want to make sure your hands are working, because no one's raised a hand yet, okay? All right. Sometimes, in the mornings, people's arms don't work so well, so I ask the ladies to help raise arms for people. But, okay, everyone's arm is working. How many of you could explain the Internet of Things, or the Internet of Everything, to a colleague or a customer? And by the way, if you're Cisco, don't raise your hands, because I want to see the other people, the non-Cisco people. How many could explain it? I had a half a hand over here, but I'm... You might call me to the stage. You don't want to? I'm not going to call you to the stage, don't worry. Yes, here, put on this funny hat and answer a question. Anybody else over here? Okay, so not many people are doing it. It's complex. We talk about it. It becomes a bit of a buzzword. So what I'm going to try and do is simplify it so that everybody in the room will be able to remember what the Internet of Things is. And all you have to do is remember a potato. All right? Now you're going to think I'm crazy, but I'm going to explain to you why. If you can remember a potato, you can explain the Internet of Things. Yeah, suddenly everyone's head popped up and did he just say a potato? Yes, I did. What I'm going to explain is how we've had technologies for 30 years called machine to machine, and how that's evolved into the Internet of Things, and then how that becomes the Internet of Everything. But to start off, machine to machine, what are we talking about? It's about a device that captures an event, transmits that event over a network to an application, and it becomes meaningful. But that's just words. So now we're going to put it into reality. There's a company in Hong Kong that ships potatoes from Los Angeles to Hong Kong. And potatoes, you don't want them to show up rotten. So they ship them in refrigerated containers, and they stick a module in this container. And the module that sits in there, it captures an event. And that event is the temperature, the carbon dioxide level, the humidity levels. And it transmits it so the guy in the control room on this ship knows exactly what's going on. He knows that it's getting too warm in there and he needs to open a vent. Or that it's getting too humid and needs to turn on the dehumidifier. So he can then send somebody out to shipping container number 4,506 out of 12,000 containers, and they can go open it. So that's machine to machine. So it's good because we're capturing this information. We can make sure the potatoes arrive in good shape. But wouldn't it be easier if we could automate it and it just sort of automatically flips that vent open? Or it automatically goes ahead and turns on the dehumidifier. And that's what you get into with the Internet of Things. So before you had just machine to machine, now what we have is a network of uniquely identifiable things that communicate without human interaction using IP connectivity. So that same company now is working on automating a switch that will flip open the vent for them. It's nothing fancy, it just flips the vent and it turns on the dehumidifier. But how do you get it to work? So now they're developing that intelligent system that automatically knows it. So now it doesn't have to go to the person in the control room anymore. What happens now is it knows automatically and it takes those actions without us. What does that mean? We're getting rid of the inefficient component, which is us as humans. But don't worry, we come back. Now you go into the Internet of Everything. Now think about this. We've got the shipping container right now. The potatoes are on there. The potatoes are taking care of themselves. But those potatoes started out at a farm in, let's say, California. What if we were connecting up the pallets where the potatoes were being put on? And then they were being put onto a train, so you knew exactly where they were on the train when it got shipped down to Los Angeles. When they arrived in the port, they knew when to send the forklift to go pick them up and put them into the container. And then when they get into the container, it gets them onto the ship. And then you connect it all the way through to Hong Kong. So when it's arriving into Hong Kong, you have the drivers there to come pick it up. The retailers know when it's coming in. You're connecting that whole system. And what you're doing then, this is where you bring together the people, process, data, and things into a single solution. And this is where we really want to get to. We want to start linking these things and driving the real value out of them. Because think about how streamlined that process would be, how cost efficient it would be, and how it would allow you to actually start driving new revenue streams. So there you go. Hopefully now when people ask about you, you'll just say the Internet of Things is about a potato, right? Don't say it to your boss. He'll probably think you're crazy and might fire you. But it'll be a good way to remember. Just think about how does a potato get somewhere and what can you do with it? Okay, so was I successful? Does everyone understand it now? Does everybody's hand go up when I say, can you explain IoT, IoE? Okay, I failed. All right, I tried. I'll move on to my next example, which is a carrot. I'm joking. So how does this whole thing work, though? How do we create these solutions? And this is important because it's not just one little piece that you need. What you need is that module we talked about that's going to connect over a network, through a platform, and into an application. So that's that machine-to-machine technology. But then what we have is all these things are sending data back and forth. And it becomes really interesting because we're capturing this data. But what it's about is developing the intelligent systems that know what to do with that. They initiate the next actions. They automate the processes. And then all of this creates security risks. So you got to pull it together. And then, of course, it's got to be delivered, so you need professional services. And when you have all of these things working together, that's where we start developing the solutions, the consumer solutions, government solutions, and enterprise ones. They're going to change the way we live our lives, and the way we work, and the way we interact and transact. But to give you some examples of how this comes together and what some of these solutions are, we'll look at a few use cases. We have employee monitoring. This can be child monitoring. And I love using this example because that's the ugliest band I've ever seen. But it works and it's been around for years. And it's because one company needed to track where their employees were. So it's got a SIM inside of it and they know where they are. But what you also see is a lot of things being used for child tracking. So this is done in India and in Malaysia. You can buy a little application or a clip that will go with your child's bag. You'll know exactly where they go. So it's using it to monitor where somebody is. Asset tracking. I know what you're thinking. I have a cow at home. I don't know what to do with it. So we're going to tag that cow. But it isn't just about cows. It's about tracking any different kind of asset that can be interesting. And so one that I think is interesting is what Diageo is looking at doing. And Diageo makes a number of different brands of whiskey. So what they're thinking is, well, we've got a bunch of whiskey that's being sold in China that's really not our whiskey. That's a problem with counterfeiting. So now they're going to tag the underside of these whiskey bottles and the lids. And they'll be able to go into a store and know whether it's their whiskey, whether it's real whiskey. So you can minimize the risk of fraud and counterfeiting. Other things, of course, these are the ones we see being driven a lot right now. It's using them in manufacturing to do predictive maintenance on your equipment, so you know when to actually fix it before it breaks down. Everyone likes talking about Google Glass, but I don't see anybody here wearing a Google Glass. But watch, next year you're going to see a lot of activity in the glass space. Not from Google, but from everybody else who's making them, because it makes so much sense to use them in the workplace. Training and supervision, security. This is an example of teaching somebody how to drive a forklift. You can use this for anything from airplane repair to everything else. It'll be an exciting space. Video surveillance. I've been lucky enough to live in London for 11 years and now Singapore for 5 years. These are the two cities that probably take more pictures of people than anybody, so I must be on film everywhere, hopefully not doing anything bad. Another thing that I think would be very interesting in Asia is mobile point of sale. Because we have still, in most of the countries in ASEAN, a very cash-based society. We don't use the credit cards. A lot of people don't have access to it. And a lot of these mom and pop shops, the small and medium-sized businesses, can't afford to go out and buy an expensive credit card terminal. Now what we're getting is really cheap offerings that almost any mobile phone can start accepting credit cards. It starts driving the economy and digitizing it. But this is one way to look at it, and you're thinking, none of these apply to me. But I want to show you how easy it is to start taking things like this and applying it to your own industry. So what I'm going to show is what happens in a hospital. And I just showed this one because it's an interesting one for me because there's a lot of different uses in here. And let's say I run a hospital. I've got one major concern at the beginning. It's my facilities. I've got the hospital organization. So what do I want to do? Well, I want smart buildings. I want to start controlling my energy, my HVAC. I want to do predictive maintenance on the equipment inside of the hospital. Maybe I want to do biometric access so you can show when people are coming in. So it gives me a nice smart building. But then I've got all these assets, so why don't I start doing asset management? See, it's not just about cows and whiskey bottles. Why would you want to do asset tracking inside of a hospital? Well, think about this. One of these pieces of equipment can cost tens of thousands of dollars, or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. And you don't always know where they are. And it worked out, there was 1 hour a day of a nurse is spent looking for equipment. So think about if we started tracking everything and we knew exactly where it was in the hospital, how much more progress we could have. And let's face it, let's say it's an EKG machine and I'm having a heart attack. The last thing I want is a nurse walking around going, where is this actually at? I don't know. I can't find this piece of equipment where I'm sitting there going, somebody zapped me. So it helps you find those things. And this becomes really interesting because it's not just about being able to improve patient care. It drives productivity in your organization as well. One thing to consider on this, though, to do this, you can't just go and plug it in. You need to think about the small cell technology because you need to be able to pinpoint exactly which room it's located in. Next one, video surveillance, of course for security, but a lot of it's more for patient monitoring and protection. Theft and fraud is huge in hospitals. And there's something like 30% of hospital equipment gets stolen in the US. So think about that. If you can just track where things are and see what people are doing with them, and if people are stealing that, or going into the drugs cabinet and stealing the pharmaceuticals, that helps out. But there's also fun ways you can do it, and things like ICU, and this is done by Apollo hospitals in India. When someone goes into intensive care, you can't actually go and see them. But say it's a family member, and there's not a good prognosis on their chance of survival. This at least allows you to interact with them while they're in the room. So it's just leveraging technology to do something as basic as video technology and teleconferencing. Another thing that hospitals have is doctors and nurses. So we'll call them the practitioners, professionals. So obviously everyone talks a lot about electronic health records. It'd be very useful to automatically have all my history on any device when a doctor sees me. But what I like seeing is what they can do start next. And I thought I'd put a picture in here of the Apple Watch because everyone loves talking about it. To be honest, for me, it's just another piece of technology. I like the solutions you can do on top of it. Now, if a doctor's wearing this watch, just think about it. You can start doing tracking. So you, just like with the assets, you know exactly where they are in the hospital. You can send them notifications and assigning jobs to them. Now, why is that important? Think about any time you've been in a hospital. Someone's calling out on a microphone saying, "Will Dr. So-and-so please come to this area?" Now you know where everybody is. If you need a specialist, you know what area of the hospital they're. You start moving everybody around from that. Another example is those same glass solutions. Like I said, I don't think it's going to be Google. They don't have enough battery life. But imagine that when I'm learning how to be a surgeon, someone can actually be advising me while I'm doing the surgery. If I'm the patient, I feel a little bit more relieved. It's expert assistance. Say there's a brain surgeon in London who's the best in the world, and you want to do a surgery here in Manila. That doctor can actually participate and watch and guide you through the process to show you how to deliver it. It also gives information up on the screen so you can see all the vital statistics, and it minimizes the risk of malpractice suits because you can show what's actually happened during the surgery. You're recording the whole procedure. Final one about the healthcare professionals, and this is my favorite one because the business case makes so much sense. It's called Swipe Sense, and it's really simple. It's a little band clip that the doctor wears right here. And it's connected to these little sensors in the side. There's a little one over here which basically sanitizes their hand, and they have, whenever you go to wash your hands over here, it does that, it captures it. But you're thinking, why does that matter? Doctors wash their hands. In the US every year, 100,000 people die from infections in hospital. 100,000 people. And there's only a 70% compliance rating of doctors and nurses properly sterilizing their hands after seeing one patient and before they see the next one. That leads to the infections that lead to the deaths. All this clip does is make sure doctors and nurses wash their hands. You can track it in real time. They put in the small cells around the organization. When I walk up to one of these places, I wash my hand, there's something in there that transmits back and forth, and it captures it, it goes into the analytics. They know in real time how people are washing their hands. But you can't always get somewhere, so they carry these other things which are automatic on the side to give them a quick sterilization of the hands. And they can press it, and it captures it again. You're always knowing, and what they're doing is changing behavior. They're making sure these people now know that they have to do this every time, and that will save lives. Final one, patient care, because let's face it, I'm never going to be a surgeon, but there's a good chance I'm going to be a patient as I get older. Leveraging things like telehealth. And this could be interesting if you live in a remote region. Or think about it in places like the Philippines. You have a lot of people who live in remote regions who don't always have the best access to healthcare. This allows them to get that access. You might do things like patient bands. Now these bands are getting really interesting. It's not about just the fitness ones that track how many steps you do and if you're sleeping well or not. There's ones that are actually capturing a lot more information around your blood pressure, blood oxygen levels, and allows you to improve that performance. Final one is about looking at more that patient experience once I'm in the hospital. How do I get my medications? So when I was in hospital about a year and a half ago, nothing was wrong bad, but I went to go get my medications and it took me an hour and a half of queuing just to get my prescription. Why don't we start using digital signage to allow someone to come up and do the self-service? Helps you upsell other products as well, and then when you want to pay for it, they come around with a mobile point of sale. So it gives you that whole chance that you can change that customer experience. And the reason I wanted to show this is we'll always hear examples of specific use cases. What I can show you now is you take it from your industry, start pulling those in and see how can I use that exact same thing to change some component of my business. So to close off, some essential guidance. When you look at these solutions, make sure you engage stakeholders early and often. IT can't do these solutions on their own anymore. You need to talk to the end users, the lines of business, the strategy teams in your organization. So work with them to figure out what you should be doing. Define your third platform strategies. And notice that this one's plural. It's not just about having a mobile strategy that's done on its own. What's your mobile strategy? Cloud, big data, social business. How do those support the overall IT strategy and support your business strategy? Prepare for constant change. AEC is going to be very interesting, but these technologies are going to open up your markets to a lot of new competitors you're not ready for. So be prepared for that. And finally, partner for success. This is also important. A lot of companies like thinking, well, we've always done things on our own, we can do it alone.
trust me, with a third platform, you don't want to go alone. You need to find vendors and partners who can support you, help you build that foundation you need today to develop tomorrow's solutions. And on that, I'd like to thank you very much. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Anderson. Now that we know about the ecosystems, how these technologies are applied to businesses, of course, economic opportunities, future strategies, and security solutions, among others, after the business implications of fast IT, our next speaker is here to present the implications of the larger ecosystem, that is community. His expertise is setting the ICT master plan strategy for entire cities, how connecting the unconnected can build new cities, manage communities, and deliver public services. He is the managing director of Cisco Systems and a citizen of the world. May I call on stage Mr. Amer Azemi.
Thank you, Pat. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And let me put my little bit of Tagalog over here, Magandang umaga. And that's where it stops. So I'm going to talk to you about the word that you've been hearing a lot today, fast IT, right? And I'll give you a quick view of how that needs to be established in IT organizations around the world, right? So you've heard a lot about convergence. You've heard a lot about how this mobile, social, cloud, analytics, the data, all of that is driving digital disruption around the world, right? Some of these numbers that you see on the screen are mind-boggling. If you look at that, 2/3 of the world's mobile data traffic will be video by 2015, right? Even today, anything you want to look up, you go to Facebook or you go to YouTube, it's there, right? So we are very quickly moving towards that. The number of mobile connected devices exceeding the number of people on earth, I think it has already happened, in my opinion. And I live in India, and India is a fantastic example of that, right? We were talking to an FMCG company, and we were telling them that there are 5 billion cell phones in the world. This was a couple of years ago. And they said, hold on, that's not possible, because we only sell 2.5 billion toothbrushes in the world. How can there be 5 billion cell phones? I don't know about Philippines, but if you come to India and you drive a few hours out of a large city, you'll see people sitting outside their homes brushing their teeth with sticks which they break from trees, right? Neem sticks. They're using their cell phones to transact all of their business. That's how pervasive technology is becoming today, right? And if you look at the other stats out there, 50 billion connected objects to the internet by the year 2050, and that is going to happen, right? And at that time, you're not talking about your standard laptops and cell phones and all the others. You're talking of a lot more devices. You're talking of factories getting connected to the network. You're talking of homes, and Charles showed you how hospitals and various devices in that are getting connected to the network, right? And the most important one, 77 billion apps. That's billion with a B. 77 billion apps will be downloaded in 2014. That's a huge number. And what that tells us is we are very, very clearly moving towards what we call an app economy, right? There is a prediction by some analysts which actually say that in the next couple of years, every company out there will actually have their own app store, where they will deploy apps that are used for their own company. So that's becoming very, very prevalent. You saw some of this already in Charles's presentation, right? The converging digital disruptions. I think this digital disruption has already arrived, in my opinion. Everybody is talking about that. GE calls it the industrial internet. Gartner calls it the nexus of forces. And you've heard the IDC view on the third platform. Cisco actually calls it the Internet of Everything. And what the Internet of Everything is, and thanks to Charles, I don't have to go explaining that. I'll use your potato example somewhere else also. It's basically the process of connecting people, data, process, and things, right? And as he also explained, we've been in the business of connecting things through M2M for a very long time, right? But Cisco firmly believes that just by connecting things, the value is not derived completely, right? You need to connect those things, you need to pluck the data out of that, You need to pluck the right kind of data, which is more important, and filter out the ones that is not important. Feed that into processes, which can then be automated because of the information, the analytics that you've gleaned out of that data. And then feed it into people who can take decisions at the right time, at the right place. And we believe that the most value is actually by leveraging this connection between people, process, data, and things, right? So you've seen some numbers. Louis also talked about a $19 trillion value at stake, right? So Cisco did a study which says in the next 10 years, if you do these things properly, if you connect people, process, data, and things in your industry, and we saw examples of various industries where this is possible, and believe me, ladies and gentlemen, whichever industry you are in, Internet of Everything has already arrived in your industry, and if you're not catching up to it, it's about time you start to think about it, right? And if you look at that $19 trillion value that we spoke about, it's split like that, right? $14.4 trillion in the private sector. So all companies, the information that's being passed between them, all sorts of use cases, horizontal, vertical, all of them, put together is $14.4 trillion. And on the public sector side, which is how do cities communicate with each other, what do cities do with these kinds of use cases, and buildings, etc., we're talking another $4.6 trillion in value, again, over the next 10 years, right? So this is how the distribution of that is. So very interesting, right? So if you look at the private sector, for example, asset utilization, supply chain logistics, all of those numbers are fairly evenly distributed. So if you pick any one of those, right, and if you do that appropriately in your sector, in your industry, look at the amount of value that you will have. $2.5 trillion in asset utilization. That's something most companies are suffering with. Most factory floors are suffering with. Pretty much every industry. Similarly, improved customer experience. Who would have realized that just by ensuring a proper customer experience, there is so much value to be had on the table, right? And on the public sector side, there is a whole lot of work that is going on, right? I'll talk about some examples as we go along, but even in that, citizen experience, again, is almost a $412 billion value. So we've talked about the Internet of Everything, we talked about the Internet of Things. Let's look at some of the pain points in the industry today which can potentially be resolved by doing some of the things that we are talking about, right? So manufacturing. In large manufacturing companies, in large manufacturing plants, a single minute of downtime actually costs them about $22,000. That's a large amount of money if things start to add up with downtime, right? Utilities, annual theft or loss costs $1 billion globally, right? Oil and gas, this is an interesting number, which says that the data generated in an oil and gas company is not given to the right person at the right time almost 98% of the time. So just look at these three pain points that we are talking about. If you were to solve this using Internet of Everything and Internet of Things and all of the others that we spoke about, look at the amount of impact that you could potentially have in the industry, right? Huge. So the possibilities in our mind are pretty much endless, right? If you look at an example of manufacturing, for example, right? What this is doing is, if you look at it, pretty much everything on a manufacturing floor is getting connected to each other, right? So devices, machines, sending information over to the people who can take action on it at a relevant time. If you look at the last one there, clean me next shift, right? If that information gets to the right person at the right time, then you're possibly avoiding downtime immediately. Right. Similarly, all of the other things, like for example, that reporting of so much energy was used today. And imagine if you were to do some sort of analytics on that, and you come up with ideas saying, okay, the energy used today seems to be higher than yesterday. So is that indicating a problem somewhere? So you can start to look at trends because of that and start to take some action on some of these things, right? Similarly, if you look at oil and gas, for example, right? Today, not all of these devices, not all of these components are connected. They are not interconnected to each other. They are not talking to each other, right? So in this example, if your refinery is connected to your pipeline, if your pipelines are connected to your oil field, you probably complete that whole value chain, right? And if there is any problem anywhere down the value chain, then you immediately know that there is something wrong going on, right? There are a lot of companies, if I take cities as an example, who are doing this in water management, right? So they put sensors in the water pipes, and if they sense that there is a pressure loss between two different sensors, then they immediately know that there is something wrong. Is there a leakage? Is there something else that is going on? So immediately they're able to send somebody to take action on it before even a citizen senses that and reports that back to them. Huge value in doing things like that, right? Because you're potentially solving problems before they even occur. Similarly on mining, having connected the entire ecosystem, there is a whole lot of value that you can derive out of it. Lots of mines in Australia have now begun to do that, right? How do you make sure that entire value chain is connected to each other? From a utilities perspective, if your generation and your transmission is connected to your end users, to your consumers, the possibilities are endless, right? So if you are running out of power, for example, today in developing countries, I'm sure Philippines is no different from India in that perspective. The only way utility companies deal with shortage in power is a total blackout, right? Imagine if they were coming up with a situation like that and them sending sort of a signal to the consumers saying, guys, you'll have to shut down some of your non-essential loads because now we are going to run into a problem. And if the consumers act on that, then they will avoid a blackout situation, right? So lots of these possibilities occur. Lots of these possibilities are possible because of this process of getting all of these devices interconnected. Huge amount of possibilities in retail, right? You don't realize the amount of information retail companies actually, or retail chains, derive from Wi-Fi usage in the stores. Today, if somebody comes and asks me for my mother's maiden name and my firstborn child's name and all that, I would not give it to them. How many of you go to airports and other places where you say, you'll get 30 minutes of free Wi-Fi, I want all of this information? You enter all of that information and get that 30 minutes of free Wi-Fi, right? So I'm not saying that the companies will utilize that for a wrong thing, but what I'm saying is people are willing to give information for that. So companies are trying to get the relevant information they need from this free Wi-Fi usage. Barcelona, for example, uses that at bus stops and other places. When people use that information at bus stops, and get Wi-Fi access, what happens is the transport company then says, there are so many people standing at this particular bus stop, maybe I need to ship a couple more buses there, right? So they're using that information in a very proactive manner to solve certain problems, right? Similarly, as I said, in retail, there is so much going on. Usage of facial recognition. One of my pet peeves, and I'm sure all of you notice that, if you go to any large retail chain, right, and you are buying stuff which is 2 carts full and your bill is going to be, I don't know, some $500. But then you see there is one guy who picks up 1 packet of chips and there is a dedicated line for that guy, less than 5 items. So now companies in the US and other places are starting to think about it and say, who is giving me more revenue? Is it that guy with the packet of chips? Or is it this guy who is struggling with 2 carts of his? So people are starting to think about that and saying, how do we leverage some of that information? Can we give better access, better service to people who are giving me better revenue, right? Instead of just saving some time. So Walmart, for instance, in the US is experimenting with putting sensors in carts. And as soon as you drop something in your cart, it already knows what it is. And by the time you reach the checkout, it already knows what your bill is, right? And so it gives you a better experience. And again, all of this is because of that interconnectivity between people, process, data, and things that I spoke about. In cities, there's endless amount of work being done. People are leveraging sensors, people are leveraging all of this technology to do a lot of different things, a lot of things which is impacting the quality of life for people. Improving parking has such a big impact on people. You know, there was an interesting study done which said in the city of Paris in France, a person on average spends about 7 years of his life finding a parking space. So if I could convert that to traffic and relate that to Manila, maybe that's 15 years, right, of your life spending in traffic. So if you were to solve some of those little challenges, then what are you doing? You're giving better quality of life back to people. So a lot of cities today are now investing in these technologies to say, can I give a better parking experience to people? Can I give them access to a parking spot even before they reach the area that they have to reach, right? People are making money out of this. In San Francisco, the city is leveraging that information, and what they're doing is they're actually selling that information to restaurants. And they're saying, okay, so if you book a table at a restaurant, for example, in San Francisco, it tells you you have a reservation from 6 to 8 p.m. I'm blocking this particular spot, which is right in front of my restaurant for you already. Imagine the customer experience out of that, right? So if I was going to that restaurant and if I get that level of experience, I'd probably go back to that restaurant again and again, because I'm not having to drive around, trying to find a parking spot. So those are some of the interesting possibilities from a city's perspective. So we looked at the definition of IoE and IoT and the others. We looked at what are the different possibilities in various segments. Now the big question is, if you look at your own organization, if you look at your own sector, are you ready for this disruption? Are you ready to tackle what is going on in this? Are you ready to catch that bus that you will miss if you don't get onto it immediately, right? So if you're the CEO of an organization, you're definitely smiling at this disruption, because you know that this is going to add a lot of value to you, is going to add a lot of value to your organization. But if you're a CIO, like most of you in the crowd today, you must be scratching your head saying, how do I tackle this? How do I gear up for this? How do I prepare for this onslaught that is going to come in? The typical answer to this, ladies and gentlemen, is this: buy a red Ferrari and all your problems will be solved. Well, that's not it, but I'll tell you what it is. So there are lots of challenges for the CIOs, right? If you look at some of these here, because of IoE and all of that, the IT complexity in your organization is going to go up. There is absolutely no doubt about that in my mind, right? Business wants to innovate fast. They want time to capability to improve. They want to be able to, bring in new applications and the others, quickly into the business. And today, business outcome is the only goal today, right? I used to be the CIO for a very large organization in India, managing about 50,000 or so users. We decided when to introduce new technology. We decided when to, introduce a BlackBerry, for example. Those days are long gone. As CIOs, you don't have that luxury today, right? You're not going to be measured by SLAs. Nobody's going to see whether your server is up 99.9% or not. Today, you are going to be judged by business outcomes. How quickly can you enable a new application in the environment? How quickly can you ensure that a new person is onboarded into your company? How quickly can you ensure that a person is offboarded? Person who's leaving. So there are a lot of these things that are going to be important as you go along. Business outcomes is going to be the key. And if you're not paying attention to that, it's about time you start paying attention to that and start forgetting about some of the old SLAs, right? So apps are clearly the oxygen of business today. And if you don't pay attention to it appropriately, this will probably, kill your organization. The criticality of these applications, how quickly can you enable all of these applications, is going to be very, very important. And today, most of the IT organizations actually struggle when it comes to that, right? So the whole inability to deploy applications and manage them is actually stopping people from doing innovation properly, right? So that is something that you'll have to start to consider. How do you do that? How do you enable your infrastructure to be able to drive these application requirements very quickly? Lines of business taking IT into their own hands. I'm sure all of you have this problem, right? Earlier, IT used to dictate, which application, which devices are getting used in the organization. Today, lines of business are deciding that. Because of BYOD and BYOX and everything else, people are deciding what to bring in because it helps them in their innovation process. Right? So you'll have to be aware of that, right? And there is this whole relationship between IT and line of business, which in my mind has to be reinvented. The IT organization, the CIOs have to be much closer to the lines of business heads to ensure that you understand what their challenges are, you understand what they want to do, and help them build that innovation capability in their organizations so that they can keep up with this onslaught of IOE and the others, right? Service orchestration has been one of the largest problems in IT organizations, right? How quickly can you ensure that a service can be enabled in a particular organization? That is one of the largest challenges, right? So the solution for all of this in Cisco's mind is what we call fast IT, right? So what exactly is fast IT then? So a lot of words on this, but very simply what it means, it's the new IT operating model. It's the new model which will enable you to do business, which will enable you to keep your infrastructure ready for the business that is always jumping for innovation and the others. It will be what you need as a CIO to drive business innovation. A lot of CEOs are today starting to look at the CIOs to say, you are the champion of my business innovation, right? So that's where fast IT is something that will come handy for you. There are three very key, very simple principles on how you drive fast IT in your organization, right? One of them is simple, which is how do you simplify the whole infrastructure in your company? How do you integrate across various silos that have been built over a period of time, right? The other is being smart. How do you create intelligent capabilities and services that fuel growth? I'll give you one example of this. There's an insurance company in Australia which is now leveraging social media platforms to anticipate business for its consumers, right? So they actually go and work on Facebook and Twitter and all of these sites and look for people who are saying, yay, I've graduated today, right? So they pick up that thread and say, if this person has graduated from college, he's probably going to buy a car. And if he's going to buy a car, then he's obviously going to need insurance, right? So now they start to track that person and say, okay, has he bought a car? If he's bought a car, can we quickly go and talk to him about insurance? Or if he's not bought a car, can we speak to him and help him in that decision? So thinking well ahead of the organization, thinking well ahead enables you to bring some of these new business opportunities which you might not have been thinking about, right? Security is obviously going to be key. With all of these new devices coming into the organization, with all of these apps coming into the organization, how do you make sure that your organization is secure? How do you defend against some of these attacks that might be happening in your organization, right? So let's look at some of these in a little more detail. So on the key principle of keeping your complexity low, on the simple part, you have to unify your various discrete IT domains that you have today. So you might have different network organizations, you have different security infrastructure, you have different storage infrastructure. You need to bring all of those together. You need to bring them into a pool, manage them as virtual infrastructure. You cannot have differentiation between a person who's operating on a fixed basis versus a person who's operating on a mobile basis. All of these need to be converged together. On and off premise, I think Charles talked about it. How do you combine those? How do you bring all of these together into a virtual pool is something that you have to start thinking about. Programmability, I think a few people talked about that. That is essential. How do you ensure that your infrastructure is ready for the demands that new applications bring in, right? When you get in a new application, how can your infrastructure be ready to respond to that? Provide the right resources to it. Make sure that you defend it appropriately from security and all of that. And automation is going to be key. Gone are the days when you could have the luxury of people sitting and managing your infrastructure manually, right? You saw the example of one of the companies that Charles talked about, right? 2 back-end engineers. It's those days, ladies and gentlemen, they've arrived. Now you have to start looking at how do you automate your organizations, right? Some of these simple processes which are labor intensive, they will clearly have to be automated and move on. On the smart piece, how do you capitalize on the intelligence that you can glean from a lot of these sensors and a lot of this information that is out there on social media and some of the others, right? Creating policies and driving them automatically through your infrastructure, that's going to be very, very important. You cannot manage each and every device manually. You have to have policy engines which will drive your entire infrastructure as a whole. You need to use analytics to tap into intelligence and pick up information that you might not have seen. So can you look at what else is happening in the organization? Can you pick up trends that might be happening? Is there one particular group which is doing some type of work and you can provide some sort of ready information to them, some sort of special services to them? And harnessing data in motion is going to be very, very important. Everybody talks about, if all of these devices are there, if all of these sensors are there, there's so much network traffic that is going to be there. But then the idea is not to send every piece of information from your end devices back to your data center, right? So if you look at some of the examples we spoke about, utilities, for example, right? Do you need every little piece of information from your pipelines, from your transmission lines, etc., that needs to be sent back to the data center? Can't you start to do some processing at the edge? Can't you start to look at fog computing, make some decisions closer to the edge, and only send the information that is required to take decisions back to the data center, right? From a secure perspective, I don't have to talk to you about this. You've seen this. As more and more devices, more and more connected devices come into the infrastructure, security will become a challenge. There's absolutely no doubt about it, right? How do you make sure that you protect your infrastructure proactively from, attacks like that? That is something that you'll have to look for. Improving visibility is important. So if you have analytics, if you have all of your infrastructure connected, if you have those virtual pools that I spoke about, then you will improve visibility into your infrastructure. You'll start to see trends that are happening, and then you will be able to take quick action wherever required, right? And you'll have to respond faster when there are security situations. You cannot be slow in response, right? So what Fast IT does for you, it actually brings in a lot of savings because you're doing those three things that we spoke about. You're automating a lot of different things, you're freeing up some of your resources, you're simplifying your infrastructure, maybe spending a little bit less on your infrastructure, saving your organization from various security threats, etc., proactively. And what is happening is because of this, it'll probably yield you about 20 to 25% TCO reduction. Right? And what we are suggesting to organizations is take that saving and push that back into your innovation capability. That's important, right? A lot of organizations are today doing that. So it's not just a matter of saving costs, but take that and push innovation. That's where I think you get closer to the lines of business, you get closer to the CEOs, etc., because they're more keen on seeing innovation happen. So we actually call it an IOE dividend, which is the savings that you're creating, that is the dividend that you then push back into your innovation capabilities, right? So in the end, what IT needs to start doing today, first of all, you have to start thinking about a fabric of clouds, right? One cloud infrastructure is probably not going to be, the key to all of the problems in your organization. You'll have to start to think about an ecosystem of cloud infrastructures within your organization. I spoke about fog computing. Intelligence at the edge is something that you will have to start looking at. Otherwise, your networks are not going to be able to respond to all of the information that is going to come out from the various sensors and the others, right? Seamless mobility. This is what everybody is asking for in the organization today. Right? And if you look at the next generation of people who are coming into the workforce, the millennials as you call them, if you look at large organizations, they're actually preparing themselves for these millennials coming in, who are saying, don't box me into these small cubicles. give me the mobility that I want. I want to go sit in some place where I can interact with a colleague of mine and come up with some sort of an innovation, etc. So seamless mobility across the organization is going to be very important. Software-defined IT, I spoke about application agility, right? How do you make sure that as new applications come into your infrastructure is able to respond very quickly to that, bring them into your fold, bring them into your security infrastructure, etc. Right? So that software-defined IT agility is going to be very, very important. And you'll have to expand your security perimeter, right? This is very important because security is not limited to your servers and the others. Now you have to make sure that you have an extended ring of security. So all these devices that are coming in through BYOD and the others, they are also, sufficiently protected, and your network is protected from all of these devices. Most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, IT will have to lead this transformational journey. So you cannot sit in the back seat and look at the businesses driving this transformation for the companies, right? The business is looking for agility. The business is looking for a very quick response to some of their challenges, and IT will have to lead that transformation. So what that means is that red Ferrari you bought, you have to be in the driver's seat for that, right? So your organization needs to become that red Ferrari. Your organization needs to be driving at the speed of a Ferrari. And you, Mr. or Miss CIO, have to be on the driver's seat. You cannot sit and watch people take innovation on your company. And the good news is, as you go along this journey, Cisco is there to help you. And we are there to guide you through this. We are there to sort of lead the charge on some of these for you, because we've done that. We've done that internally. We've done that for a number of customers. And we are there to guide you through this journey. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Azami. And there you have it. I just hope our national legislators and officials are in attendance here today, right? So they could have heard that. So anyway, it's time now to break into sessions. We have actually divided you all, and it's time to conquer, because during the registration, we have asked you to fill out forms. Should you wish to be in the mobility track, kindly please stay put, because it will be held here in the Isabella Ballroom. For those who have registered and chose the cloud and virtualization, it will be held in the Makati Ballroom. And finally, for big data and analytics, it will be held in the Manila Ballroom, all right? So this way you get to attend the session that is most applicable to your industry, all right? So once again, let me just reiterate. Mobility, stay right here in the Isabella Ballroom. Cloud and virtualization, Makati Ballroom. Big data analytics, Manila Ballroom. So before you leave, we just have a very, very few more announcements. Make sure, does everybody have the feedback forms with you? Yes? Yes? Please let me know, because if you don't have it, it's very important that you have your feedback forms. Fill up the plenary session for now, and then later, right after your tracks, kindly fill up that second portion. We will receive them at the end of the program, because in exchange of that, we will give you a very special token, a premium item from Cisco. Don't also forget to make sure that you take a picture, a selfie, a group shot, anything relevant about this event, and use any of the 3 social medias, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and use the hashtag Cisco Connect, because if you are the lucky winner, you will bring home the grand prize of a brand new MacBook Air. So if that is you, make sure that you post as many hashtags of Cisco Connect right here, right now. So once again, this is a good time now to ask our lovely ladies in white outside as to which ballroom you will be having your session. So once again, thank you very much for joining us here at the Cisco Connect 2014. We'll see you back here at 5 o'clock p.m. Enjoy.